I think HBCUs are the best schools in the country. And I don't think that because I work here. I work here because I think that.
Every institution has different acceptance rates.
Yes.
Some are similar, but how does the institution say like, okay, we're going to accept this amount of people, or how are we going to be? Because I also think that's what creates like a hype about institutions most of the time is, oh, they have a low acceptance rate. I got in, so now I feel like I'm the chosen one, right? So how does the institution come up with that?
Which essentially means, by the way, that the club that's hardest to get into is the best club? Is it though? Is it though? Are the best parties you've ever been to the house parties? I don't believe that if you have a higher GPA or higher test score that you're a better student or a better person. It just happens that you have a higher GPA. You might be more prepared for college, but it doesn't make you better. It would be cool to have the presidential debate here. I just said that, right? I forgot I said it. He didn't forget I said it, and he thought it was a great idea too. The hardest part about my job, by far, is safety and security challenges. It is by far the hardest thing to have to call a parent or brother or sister and say that, it tears me up every time.
If I'm a student and I can't afford to attend my institution anymore, or I need more money, what's the best way of going about that? Who do I contact? What do I say? When is the best time to ask for money? As someone who's been to college and also a president of an institution, do you recommend getting loans?
It's not good to take loans to come to college to enjoy it. That is a bad idea. To spend 6, 7, or 8 years hanging out.
Yeah, that's a bad
If you're going to spend your future self's money, then you need to get in and get out. I get angry that some people who talk about the idea that a college degree isn't worth it, they went to college and they're sending their kids to college. So who are they telling that to? First of all, college is the best 4 years of your life. There ain't nobody who's ever been to college. That was my Cat Williams impression. There ain't nobody who's ever been to college. Sorry. Who doesn't think that college is the best 4 years. And so.
What's up, y'all? We are back again with another episode of the Young and Dumb Show. And we just keep changing the game, y'all. We are sitting down with the president of Virginia State University, Mr. President Abdullah, which just happens to be my alma mater.
Just happens to be your alma mater. Just happens to be.
Just happens to be.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you.
I appreciate you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's always a good day when you get some of your fantastic alums to come back and hang out with you. So it's a great day for me.
Yes. Well, we have a lot to talk about today. I'm super excited about this episode because I think a lot of times as a student, as an alumni, it's just like, oh, okay, Virginia State's the school I went to, or Virginia State's the school I go to. But there's a lot of things that goes on to make sure this school is running and functioning, right? A lot of people in place. And that's just one of the things I happen to learn being in student government. Like that just gave me a whole different mindset. Like I no longer thought as just like a student, like, oh, I want more money. No, it's like it's something that goes on for that. So we're gonna get started. So what was your history like before becoming President Abdullah? What were you doing?
Well, first, I want to congratulate you on all of your great stuff.
Thank you.
And I want the people to know, if they don't know, that of course you're the executive vice president of SGA here with Yanaya Campbell, who was president, and
Shout
you all
Yanaya.
left a heck of a legacy.
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud of the work that you all did, and we miss you. We miss you both around here at VSU. So let's see. Before I was president, I've been here now almost 8 years. So I started February 1st, 2016.
Wow. So your anniversary's coming up.
It's coming up in a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, big fat 8, which is kind of cool. It's my favorite number, so it's a big deal for me, right?
Wow.
But before that, I was at Bethune-Cookman University as a vice president, provost and vice president at Bethune-Cookman. Before that, I was at Florida Memorial University as provost and vice president, both HBCUs in Florida.
Wow.
And then before that, I was dean and a faculty member at Florida A&M University, Rattlers. So, I've got a professional career that spans more than a couple of HBCUs. I went to Howard, and I'm originally from Chicago. So, I've... Go ahead. Break it down.
So you're from Chicago.
That is correct.
How did you even get situated with going to HBCUs?
Look, so I went to a boarding school, a mostly white boarding school in Chicago, from a black neighborhood. Went to a white boarding school, and I really wanted to go, like to an Ivy or somewhere like that, and my mother was very, very keen on me going to an HBCU, particularly Howard. She went to Howard.
Wow, okay.
And so I had scholarships to a couple of schools, a couple of good schools that I'm not going to name. I don't want to shame any of these nice, fine schools. And I told my mother that I was going to one of those schools. And she said, no. She said, I need you to go to Howard. And I said, I don't think you understand, Mom. You know, I'm going where I got the scholarship. And she said, son, I don't think you understand. She said, if you pick one of those scholarships, she said, I'm not going to come get you. You're not going to come home.
Yeah, you on your own.
You on your own, right?
Yeah.
And she said, you got to go to Howard. And I was sad about it. And then I went to visit. And I just fell in love. I mean, it's not, as you know, there's something special about being around young people, young black people trying to do something. And I was, 17 years old, and there were a lot of young ladies walking around campus at the same time, too. I'm not going to say that didn't help me out some. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So, okay. Wow. I'm excited already. So, you went to Howard. What did you study?
Civil engineering.
Civil engineering. And what were you trying to do with that degree?
You know what's crazy? I do not know. Like, I mean, if, you know, it's easy to kind of make up a story now, but if I go back to when I picked it, I didn't pick it for any of the right reasons. Wow. I knew that engineers made money. And when I was in high school, there was a guy in my class I used to compete with in physics. We were both, you know, pretty smart. And recruiters would come up to us and say, well, what do you want to do? And he would say engineering, and I wouldn't say anything. And the recruiters talked to him. So the next time I started saying engineering too. Yeah. And then they said, what kind of engineering? And I didn't know. And he would say civil engineering. So I was like, civil engineering, right? He ended up changing his major. He ended up graduating in business from Stanford, right? But I stayed in it. It was I do like it. Civil engineering is large things that don't move, buildings, bridges, roads, tunnels. And I find big things that are bigger than human scale kind of fascinating. But I think in hindsight, if I had to do it all over again, I would have done math. I really love math. I like civil engineering. I love math.
So, okay, so you went to college for civil engineering. Yeah. So now at the end of your 4 years, you graduate. What was the next step there? Like, how did you, what was next after that? It
was crazy. And again, I'm trying to do my best to sit in who I was then so I can give you real honest answers, right? I really enjoyed hanging out with the faculty. I thought the faculty were the coolest thing going. You know, they were mentors for me. I used to sit in their offices all day and just talk about stuff, my professors. And so when it came close to graduation, I wanted to be them. Yeah. You know? And so I just asked them, what do I need to do to be like you? And they said, you got to go to grad school. So I said, well, I'll go to grad school. You need to get a PhD. You go to grad school. I was like, okay. So I applied to Stanford and Northwestern. And I got accepted to, well, I didn't finish my application to Stanford. That's a whole nother story. And I got into Northwestern and got my master's and PhD at Northwestern.
Wow. So I don't want to say this wrong. You're the youngest to do what exactly?
I'm the youngest African-American to get a PhD in engineering.
You're the youngest African-American to get a PhD in engineering.
When I was 24.
Wow. So was that like a big, huge thing? Like how did you come to that? How did you know that you were the youngest? Like, you know, like you think like you're the youngest that do something, but how did you know that like that was true?
No, and again, I love you walking into all of my stories. So I love all of these stories. I was, I'm not sure I knew it was a thing. I just knew that I graduated and I was looking for a job. And there's a guy, he's a speaker, good friend of mine now, but I didn't know him then, Calvin Mackey. And Calvin Mackey does a lot of public speaking. He's one of the best. He's been at Virginia State 3 or 4 times, highly motivating. He spoke at commencement, I think in May, which would have been yours. I think it was your commencement speaker. I think. No, that might have been last year. Either way, Calvin Mackey. He was going around the country doing speaking, and he spoke in Milwaukee, and my aunt was there. And he told the crowd that he was the youngest African-American to graduate, to get a PhD in engineering when he was 26. And my aunt stood up and said, my nephew's 24. So that's how I found out. And then a couple years later, I ended up meeting him. And when I met him, he told me the story. I didn't even know. Wow. So my aunt told me. She was like, yeah, you know what? You're probably the. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow. So you took that and you like, I'm the youngest.
Yeah, I figured. I figured just like him. If we say it and then somebody corrects me, then I know somebody's younger than me.
Wow, that's
no one's
dope,
corrected me yet.
That's dope. That is super dope. Wow, I always, because you know, a lot of times, I was just thinking about this the other day. A lot of times when we do stuff, we just doing it, and then we don't know that, like, okay, like, yeah, I'm just doing this. I'm just the president of the HBCU, but this is my everyday life. But to someone, it's like, wow, you're the president of the HBCU. Like, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's good to big ourselves up, or even like be in spaces where people appreciate the work that we do, because sometimes it can go unnoticed. So.
No, I agree. And I think that it's hard to sometimes develop those connections because some people, like, I know a lot of people who are super humble and they'll get around folks and you won't even know all the stuff that they've done, right? Yeah. And I actually tell my friends when they introduce themselves to other people, when you're around me, introduce yourself not humble. Like introduce yourself the way your mama would, right?
Yeah.
My baby, he, do that so people can really know, because sometimes it's important to make those connections. So,
I feel like that was one of the biggest things that I learned in college. I never really spoke up about anything that I'd done until like people be like, why didn't you say anything? And I noticed how like sometimes by me not saying something, that's a missed opportunity there.
That's right.
Right. So sometimes you could be so humble that you miss an opportunity because you're thinking like, oh, I'm bragging. But no, that's you speaking about what you do so people can put you on to different things. So that's very true. All right. So now you get your PhD.
Yes.
Right. And now what was the first role that you had at a HBCU?
Well, my first job at an HBCU was Florida A&M.
Okay.
But my first job was actually, I worked for a black engineering company in Chicago.
Okay.
Called Jackson & Tull. Shout out Rupert F. Graham Jr., who hired me. And I did that for a couple of years and taught part-time at Chicago State. I taught statics and dynamics and physics at Chicago State University. And then I always knew I wanted to teach an HBCU. The only reason I went to grad school was to be one of my professors.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was going to do that. And so I applied. This was, I don't know, see, you young and I'm old, right? So I got to tell old people stories. I don't think
you're old. You have a young spirit, though.
Thank you so much. Cool. Thank you so much.
I don't think you're old.
old people like it when young people say you're young. Old people like that. Anyway, so this was early in email and web. I say that to say that universities didn't have web pages. Only certain faculty who were very technologically literate had web pages. And so I went and found faculty members at North Carolina A&T, Morgan State, and Florida A&M University. And I emailed those professors my resume.
Wow.
And the professor at Florida A&M, Dr. Mtinga, shout out to Dr. Mtinga, he printed it out and took it to the president's office.
Wow.
And they called me back and invited me down for an interview. And that's how I got to FAMU.
Wow, that's how I had to get jobs back in the day? Wow.
No, I mean, that's totally different. Like the idea that I emailed my resume to somebody, this was 1996.
So you no
one did this. No one did it. So it's amazing it even happened.
So what gave you that drive to do that? Like what made you feel like, all right, let me just try to email it?
I was just, I was on the computer one day. It's kind of, now you're stuck on what are you going to do? I was big into computers, big into email. And one day I was just like, you know what? I need to mail these out. Well, hold on. I'll mail them out tomorrow, but I'll email them out today.
Wow.
And just got on it and did it.
And they got it way quicker.
Got it way quicker. So, and he took the initiative to get me down there. So yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool to know. All right, so that was your first position at HBCU.
Yep.
Quick question: was there a reason why is Northwestern an HBCU?
Northwestern is not. No.
Was there a reason why you went to a PWI for your PhD?
It was. My professors recommended that I do that. They thought that it would be better. At the time, they thought it would be better for me. And so they recommended go to a PWI. I picked Northwestern. They like Stanford. One of my advisors went out on the West Coast. And so I looked at some West Coast schools and I also looked at Northwestern.
So we're going to get into that and then we're going to get back to your story. Just as a HBCU student, right? Yeah. When it comes to that next level of education, do you think it's good to get a level education from a PWI or a school that's not a HBCU?
I'll tell you this. I think grad school, particularly PhDs, are really entirely different. And so at a university, like when you went to Virginia State, Virginia State's, and most schools are like this in some ways. They have this community that's trying to embrace you, right? Sometimes it embraces you well, sometimes it doesn't. But it's kind of a collection of a lot of people. At the PhD level, it really is you're working with an individual. I went to Northwestern, but I didn't, actually, that's not true. I spent a lot of time being a part of the culture at Northwestern, but most PhD students don't. Most PhD students are in a lab. They work primarily with their professor and with their lab mates. And so number one, in terms of looking at grad school, particularly getting a PhD, is finding the right mentor and advisor that can help you get out, that is working on things that you're interested in, and is very committed to you graduating. And so be that at an HBCU or a PWI. That's what I recommend that folks do.
So you feel like it's really about what your goals are and then finding like which school can best fit that goal and the people that can help you attain that goal. Really.
Exactly, but I almost go backwards. It's figuring out what you want to do, finding the people that do that can help you out, and then what schools they're at.
Okay.
Right? You're almost looking for the people first.
Makes sense, right? Because that's like a conversation that a lot of my friends are having now that like we graduated and it's like, okay, the next level of education, do I go to HBCU again or do I go to a PWI, right? Because it's like, sometimes at HBCUs we have that culture, but then sometimes you'll get out in the world and it's just like, okay, not everybody is going to embrace you. Not everywhere is going to be that community feeling, right? So sometimes the PWI gives you that exposure to that different part of the world.
Yeah. I am not in favor of that. Like, I don't believe it's that hard. I don't think for Black people that it is terribly difficult to figure out how to move around in a world that does not always embrace you. That is not a lesson that it takes 4 years or 2 years to learn.
Let's talk about it.
It's not. It's just not.
Okay, so you feel like when they try to pull the diversity argument, that's not something that we need necessarily. No.
I think that most African Americans, 2-3 weeks on the job, have figured that part out. It's not. Right? Or anywhere you go, you figure that part out, and it's a part of life. So we deal with it all the time anyway. I think that and again, I'm not saying that HBCUs are right for everyone. I'm just saying that I don't buy that particular argument, right? And I believe that young people should go to the place that is going to make them the most successful. And if you do well in school and you learn as much information as you can, no matter what institution you go to, you're going to be set up for success, right? And so you want to go somewhere that's going to set you up for success. And if it's a small school, if it's a big school, if it's a military academy, if it's an HBCU, you need to go where you're going to be successful.
Okay, all right, I agree, but I'm here to have.
We can disagree.
Yeah, I'm here to have like the counter argument.
Okay,
I don't know why it took me so long to say that.
Okay.
But I feel like sometimes when it comes to the PWI versus HBCU argument, I don't think it's necessarily HBCUs aren't better, which is an opinion, aren't better because they can't be better. I think it's the lack of resources, right? So I think that when if I put a school like Harvard, right, against Spelman, right, would be like number one HBCU, there's going to be differences there, right? But I think the difference is more so in like the funding that goes into both of the institutions. How do you feel about that?
I think Virginia State University is the best school in the country. I think HBCUs are the best schools in the country. And I don't think that because I work here. I work here because I think that.
Stop playing. Stop playing. You playing around too much. Like, you want to do something. You want to make the money. You want to build wealth because it look cool, but you're not serious. Because you know what I got. And I got something for you. The Blueprint for Investing, Volume 1, created by me, Aaliyah Duah. It gives you a step-by-step guide on how to get started investing in the stock market. See, if you want to really build wealth, you got to put your money into things that's going to work for you, right? Because the job money cool, but you want to make the money work too, right? So it's going to give you a step-by-step guide, investing tools, the apps to use, everything. And the best part is, I know you don't like to read, so I only made it 28 pages. That's it, right? 28 pages, and you getting yourself some wealth of knowledge. So make sure y'all tune in, get your copy today, and go to financialrevolutionn.com. Let's get it, y'all. Back to the episode.
Right? And so for me, there is certainly a difference in resources and funding, and that is important. Money is important. But I'll give you an example. The best bands in the country, and everyone knows this, the best marching bands in the country are at HBCUs.
I agree, yeah.
They don't have the best uniforms or the best instruments. They don't march on the most expensive fields. They don't march with the most expensive teams that play on the team. The teams aren't the teams that win the national championships, but the bands are the best bands in the country. So we create excellence. It's not about how much resources you have. You can't buy that excellence. We are that excellent, right?
I agree.
And so I would argue that there are other areas of our campuses that might not get the same kind of shine because they don't march on the field every Saturday, but they have the same level of excellence. I believe that our HBCUs are among the best institutions in the country, and it's those institutions that are helping young people chase what we call the American dream, which are the best schools. It's the community colleges. It's the HBCUs. It's our predominantly undergraduate institutions. The institutions that many people will name are the most prestigious institutions. But prestige does not equal excellence. It just means they're prestigious.
You sound like my dad here.
Hey, look, I mean, so I really believe in this. And I don't, to me, it's not even a competition. And it's not a competition because we already won. Just because other people don't know that we're the best doesn't mean that I'm sitting around waiting on them to figure it out.
This leads to a lot of my other questions.
Good.
Right? So you're super passionate about HBCUs, right? So
yes.
I'm trying to figure out how to word this. What do HBCUs need to become like that in society, right? So as passionate as you are about
Yes.
it, right? How can we make HBCUs that marketable and that passionate besides just like this is just what's trending on social media, or you know what I'm saying? Like not a trend, like this is the thing, a place that we need our folks at.
I think for us, we just have to believe in them. And I believe that there's enough evidence for us to do that. The predominance of black lawyers and black doctors, black elected officials went to HBCUs. Now that's true because at a certain point they could only go to HBCUs, but just because they could only go to HBCUs doesn't diminish the idea of the success that has happened from young people who have gone to HBCUs. We have to believe in them and we have to support them even if we decide not to make that choice. One of the things I tell people all the time is, and again, I'm passionate about it, but I also know that a college choice is an individual decision.
Yeah.
And I don't, if somebody wants to go or needs to go to Stony Brook or needs to go to VCU, those are fine institutions, I support that. But even if you and your family decide that you're not sending your kids to HBCUs, it is critical that all African Americans support HBCUs so all kids in the future can continue to have that choice, even if they choose something different.
So what does that support look like?
It looks like us big upping each other. It looks like us sending our dollars. When we have disposable dollars we want to give, we send those to HBCUs. It's making sure that all of our kids, whether they go to HBCUs or not, that every single one of them takes an HBCU visit. It means that we really support. And support also means that we can be honest and hold our own feet to the fire, but also not be harder on ourselves than we are on other people. I'll use a restaurant example. If you go to McDonald's and they mess up your fries, you'll tell them they messed up your fries and go back the next week. But there's so many people that go to a black restaurant and they mess up your fries, and you'll say, I'm never going there again, right? And so we're harder on our own institutions than we are on others' institutions. I'm not saying we shouldn't be hard and critical and honest, but not harder than we are on others.
So what do you think, like, what do you think that stems from, though? Like, us being so much harder and more critical on each other than when we dealing with other people?
I mean, there are those of us, and many of us sometimes suffer from this pathology. I suppose that sometimes I do, who believe that other people's ice is colder than ours. And we've got to stop that. We have to believe in our own greatness. We have to believe in what we can do.
I agree.
So
I agree, and I think I'm gonna tell you, the biggest thing that I took away from VSU, and most people would think it would be educational wise, but the biggest thing I took away was I built my confidence here. And I feel like that's something that no one could take away from me. And that was so important to me because with everything that I do and everything that you do in life, you need confidence. Like walking in a room, talking to you right now, right? Being in front of the camera, speaking in front of people. I've learned all these things at VSU. And I also feel like I learned who I was, right? Like it gave me a chance to be away from my hometown, be away from what I was used to, and come here and just be embraced and loved by people who look like me. And I think that is super important in things that like you just can't get at other places, right? You really just can't get at another place. I don't think I would be the same person if I had went to a PWI. That's just my opinion.
there you go. So what was the best school for you?
What do you mean? Like
best college for you?
HBCU.
That's right, Virginia State University.
Yes. And you know what's so crazy? So I learned about VSU on an HBCU tour.
Yeah.
It took me to go on that HBCU tour to learn what VSU was. And I feel like if I never went on that tour, I probably would have never knew this school existed.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So I think like the things that you're saying are super important, especially in those youthful years, especially when college is such a big decision. Like I feel like college is like that first steps into your adulthood and is very pivotal to who you become as a person, as an adult, right? But back to your life, your life story, right? So now you're working at FAMU, and what was your position at FAMU?
I was a professor, assistant professor, associate professor, full professor. Yep.
You was a professor, and then you just gradually moved your way up, right?
Yeah.
So you were I want to speak to the difference between being a vice president and a president of a school. What are some of the main differences?
I think so. I was at FAMU. I was a dean and ultimately an associate vice president. But as a vice president, When I first became a vice president, I think that's when I really started to see the bigger picture of an institution. Start to see the whole school. I think the difference between a vice president and a president is you really get to see the entire thing. You see the institution kind of from. You feel like you're looking down and you see the whole. You see how people view it. You see people inside of it. It's just an interesting view, and ultimately more responsibility. Everything that I do as a president is, essentially the buck stops here. And so whether I know about it, I'll give you an example. If, let's say something bad happens on campus. I'm responsible for that. Whether I knew about it or started it, I'm still responsible. If the football team doesn't win, well, that buck stops here. I don't play, but I'm responsible, along with the other people, the coaches and everybody who are responsible. And so it's a lot of responsibility that is humbling when you start to realize that that this institution here has been here for over 140 years, and it's part of my job to make sure that it's around another 140 years.
Wow. So how does that make you feel, knowing that you have those responsibilities? Does it give any level of anxiety? Is it like stressful? Like, how does that feel?
Yikes. I think it is humbling. It can, especially as it relates to safety and security, it is definitely stressful. You don't want anybody to have to come to school and have something bad happen to them. Right? That hurts personally. It hurts. But it's also exciting. It's exciting. Every year there's a new group of 18, 19, 20-year-olds who show up on campus who are trying to become their best selves. And every year at homecoming, I get to see young people who have graduated and now have gone off and do incredible things, and sometimes bring their families back with little kids. Yeah. And you know that in some small way that you played a part in that. So it's great.
Wow. So what would you say? So you spoke on some of the responsibilities in terms of like, okay, everything falls into your hands, but what does a day look like being the president of VSU?
I would say that this is a simplified version, but my job kind of falls into two different categories. Okay. One of them is, I think, the part that people see the most, which is kind of the physical representation of Virginia State, right? The guy that speaks at commencement, the person you see on the field at homecoming, shaking hands and kissing babies, telling stories about VSU, listening to stories about VSU, representing us with donors, with alums, whatever, right? That kind of, I don't want to call it a mascot, right? But the kind of figure, I like the physical representation of VSU, walking, talking VSU. Then the other part of it, which is about half, is really being the CEO. And so, we are an organization, $200 million budget, full-time people, probably 750 full-time people total, full-time and part-time, probably over 1,000 people who work here, over 5,000 students. How do we make the best decisions, which we always have limited resources, to make sure that we can get the things done that we need to get done? And so the other half of my day is part sitting in the office, kind of
being a CEO.
Being a CEO.
Being a boss man. Being a boss man. So do you feel like the skills that you learned here running a school, you can take this and build your own business?
Oh, definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
That's good. Like, I feel like this is important because these are things you don't even think about. How, like, when you're actually running a school, you're running a business. This is an organization. Wow. I never even, thought about it like that. So you were also the youngest president.
No. That's not. I was, when I started here, I was 46. I'm 54 now. Wow. So I was a younger. Thank you. Say that again. Say I look younger.
You look really good for 54, President Abdullah.
See, I like that. No, but so I was 46. There were a couple. I think DeJuan Warmack from he's at Claflin now. He was previously at Harris Stowe. He was quite a bit younger than I am. Okay. And there was a time in the 20s and 30s when many HBCU presidents were in their 30s. So no, I'm not. That one I don't hold.
Yes, but just to speak to, you have a very youthful spirit. I would say very youthful spirit. And a lot of times presidents are always in suits and always dressed up. right? You're more like, hey, like I'm with my family, you know, I'm gonna come show up as who I want to be. How does that, do you ever have any backlash for that, or is it like, how does that work?
I think that one of the great challenges of the job is there's nothing that I can do that everyone will like, right? And so what I've chosen to do is to try to be the best version of me that I can be, because I'm good at that. And I'm bad at being someone that's not me. And so, and since everything that I do everything will get ultimately criticized, it'll be easier to walk through the challenges if I'm being myself as opposed to someone else. And what I really enjoy, is I think young people are some of the best mentors ever. And young people will keep you young if you allow them to invest in you.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and as I've said, the CEO part is trying to make very difficult decisions. It's easier to make those decisions if I know the students that I'm making the decisions for. So I try to do my best to get to know them. But yeah, no, I certainly get pushback.
Wow. So what do you say? Like, you just keep being you?
I just keep being me. I think that one of the pieces of advice I got from a mentor was, when you get fired, he said, and ultimately one day you probably will get fired, that it'll be better if you get fired for being you. He said, you're going to be really upset if you get fired because you were trying to be somebody else. And I just always kind of took that, right? You know, that if ultimately I'm not a good fit, which is what it means if you get fired for being you, right? It means you're not a good fit.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think I can get that, right? But I wouldn't want to try to be someone else and not be successful. That sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah. So, okay, as president, who's your boss?
The Board of Visitors. So at some universities, those are called boards of trustees, but here in Virginia, it's called Board of Visitors. So there are 15 members appointed by the governor who hire, fire, and evaluate me. Yeah.
So what does that look like? Do they do an evaluation?
Yeah.
Is it so they look at, is it based off of like things you've done in the school year? Like how does an evaluation work?
It's so and you of course, as executive vice president, you had an opportunity to meet them.
Yes.
Wonderful individuals that volunteer on behalf of Virginia State. No, they actually fill out forms, and they tell me what they want. We also have a strategic plan for the institution, so they judge me based on the strategic plan. They give me expectations every year, and they ask me in very kind words to meet their expectations.
Wow.
Sometimes I meet them. Sometimes I meet them and exceed them, and sometimes I don't meet them. And when I don't, they let me know.
What does a bad president look like? Like, how do you evaluate somebody? Because I think a lot of times as people, we just throw out these words. Like, somebody does something that you don't like, and it's like, this is a bad president, or this is a bad CEO, right? Or somebody, and then just because somebody is doing everything that you want them to do, this is a good president, but this is a good CEO. But like you said earlier, you'll never be able to please everyone. So in the same mouth where you may be making someone happy, you're making somebody unhappy. Right. So what does a bad president look like?
Nice. That is a wonderful question. I've never been asked that question. You've actually stumped me. So I'm going to try to give you the best answer. I think that a good president, I'll start with a good president. Okay. I think cares so much about the mission of the institution, the stated mission and the implied mission of the institution, that they can live that mission. And that, as I mentioned earlier, that I become in some ways a physical embodiment of the institution, that people can see that physical embodiment in you when they see you walk or see you talk. Everyone is not necessarily, charismatic, and everyone's not a good orator. But I think that when you look at good presidents as a fit, because it has to be a fit. Yeah. I might be, it's not my job to judge that, it's the board's job to judge that. But however good or bad I am here, I could be totally different as a president somewhere else, because I might just not be a good fit for that institution. Yeah. So I think that's first, right? Is how do you do that? So, and then I think it's critical in these jobs to really over communicate. It's not enough to do the work. You have to show people and tell people the work that's being done. Yeah. And you saw that as the SGA president, SGA vice president, that you couldn't just do it. Yeah. You had to come back and tell people, we did it.
Literally, we had weekly, bi-weekly things that we accomplished just because people would think that things are not getting done.
That's right.
Or think they'll magically have free laundry, and they think they just have free laundry. Like, no, we have to go speak to somebody for you to get that.
That's right.
So I think that's important.
So part of the job is making sure that people know that you are doing what you can to meet their needs. And so I think that so then by extension, a bad president is a bad fit. Is a bad person at a school. They might be good people, but they're just not a good person for that institution. Or they're not understanding that talking about and letting people know and communicating the work is a major part of the work, right? And I think that's true, honestly, for any job. Communicating your work is important for your job.
So who are some of the people that sit on your team as being a president? Because I know that it can't just be you running the school. So what's the chain of command look like?
The chain of command, we've got, I'm counting. I sit in this room to do the meeting. So I'm looking at the chairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 VPs.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 VPs, counting my chief of staff. And they all have portfolios. Probably the biggest one is our provost and vice president for academic affairs, where all the deans and all the faculty kind of report up through the provost. But we have the provost, who is also the vice president for academic affairs, vice president for student affairs and enrollment, vice president for institutional advancement, which is fundraising, our vice president for finance, who's the CFO, our vice president for compliance, and our chief of staff. And so they all have their own portfolios. The biggest one, of course, is academics.
So how often do you guys have to meet?
Have to meet. Well, it's my call, but we meet once a week.
Once a week.
We meet every Tuesday at 9:00, right here around this table.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get into the business of running the school. So what do those meetings look like? Is it like, all right, we set is it like we set a goal for the year and then y'all break it down? Like, how does that look?
Yes. So part of it is big picture, how are we accomplishing the things that we put on our strategic plan. But some of them are smaller. So right now we're filming this in January and the students come back soon. And so is everything ready? Do we have any challenges that the team needs to talk about? The VP for Student Affairs, are there activities do you need something, you need help from someone else? And so people kind of communicating, this is what's going on right now. These are the potential great things that are happening. Here's some of the potential challenges. How do we brainstorm? I might need help from my colleagues and from the president. How do we get that help? So that kind of thing. So we just sit around and talk about the school.
Yeah. So when it comes to, let's say a parent has a problem or a student has a problem, right? And they're like, I want to speak to the president.
Yes.
Are you always the best person to speak to?
I am rarely the best person to speak to.
I wanted to clarify that.
Rarely the best person to speak, because generally my view of the institution is at 20 or 30,000 feet. And so whatever the issue is, I don't know it right now. Someone else knows it much better than I do. Now I can learn it, and I certainly will, but starting with me is generally a bad idea. Having said that though, I think it's important that I am approachable and I'm not hiding. And so I always tell people you can always email me. But the first thing I do is I either send it to my ombudsman or I send it to the VP and say, can you respond and look into this? If people at the university don't respond well enough and I need to get in it, then I try to get into it. But I'm generally the last person you want to start with is me. Other than I'm going to send it to the person I know who should start it first. So maybe that is good, right? So if you got a problem with financial aid, I'm going to send it directly to the financial aid director and say you need to respond. Now, just because you sent me something doesn't mean you're going to get the answer that you want. Yeah. But I try to make sure that everyone gets an answer.
Wow, okay, cool. I wanted to break that down because people be like, I want to speak to President Abdullah. And it's just like, I promise you, President Abdullah is going to send you to someone else that can help you when you can just go straight to that person. Right.
Right. I say always give them a shot. I mean, and again, sometimes it doesn't work out, but always give the first person a shot. Is what I say.
Yes. So now when it comes to, all right, so at the end, the goal is you want students to come in, right? And you want them to graduate in 4 years. What are some of the things that are put in place to make sure that the students actually graduate in 4 years?
Well, I think one, you've seen the fancy T-shirts, right? One is just letting you know that we want you to graduate in 4 years, right? But also that it's not, because it's not high school, it's not just that if you're here 4 years that you will graduate. There's some critical things that you have to do. One of them is you got to be full-time every semester. You got to take at least 15 credit hours in the fall and the spring to get 30 or 4 year, to get in 4 years, get 120 hours. We've got to do our work to really advise you well. And so you've got to go meet with your advisor. We got to make sure that's key. So we've got to have the right academic support systems to make it in place, which is what we've tried to put in place over in the library, over in ACE. And so those are some of the things. trying to make it so that we introduce you to the faculty, to the deans, so that you can ask those critical questions to make sure that you're majoring in the right thing. One of the challenges a lot of students face is they change their major. As you change your major, then you end up, kind of falling
Missing
behind.
credits,
And so,
yeah.
how do we introduce you to enough early and get you to ask the right questions to really know that you're on the path that you want to be on?
Yeah.
But the number one thing, and to try to tell you to study and pass, right? You can pass these classes, but you can't wait till the last minute.
Yeah.
And you can't mess around. You've got to, if you want it, you got to do the work that it takes. But I think one of the big challenges for us, though, that is outside of that is really finances. And so we're always trying to raise more money, to bring more money into Virginia State. Whatever we have is just not enough to make sure that we can support young people who run into financial challenges to graduate. And so that's critical for us.
So now that we're talking about the money, let's get to the money, because I feel like the money is the most important part.
It is.
Right? One, I want to talk about, what are land grants?
All right. You want the short, long, or medium version?
Oh, whatever will give the question the best answer.
All right, cool. That means you're gonna edit it later. Okay. In 1862, Justin Morrill, who was a senator out of Maine,
Okay.
proposed that the federal government give land to every state for the purpose of founding a university that would teach and that would provide teaching and research and outreach in agriculture, mechanical arts, and military tactics. That's where you get the A&M from. Texas A&M, Florida A&M, right?
Wow.
A&M
Wow, I
and
never knew that.
A&T,
I
right?
never knew that.
Agriculture and Technical was land grant. So he started the bill to do that. That's 1862. And so the federal government gave every state land that they could sell to start these universities. The land that they gave them was not in their own state. It was generally out west, and most of the time it was inhabited by Native Americans. The states got the land, they sold the land, and then they used that money to either start or to push forward a university they already have. Every state has one. In Virginia, that land grant institution was Virginia Tech University. There's also University of Florida, Texas A&M, Michigan State, University of Illinois, Cornell, Rutgers. So every state in the union has one of those. That was in 1862. In 1890, there was another bill passed that said that if your current land grant institution does not allow access to African Americans, then you have to provide access to African Americans, or the federal government would take back the money that they were sending to the states.
Wow.
And so in the southern states, where they did not allow access to African Americans to those land grant institutions, then there was another institution that was founded for African Americans in
Which were
Florida,
HBCUs.
Florida A&M, in Delaware, Delaware State, North Carolina A&T, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Tennessee State University, Alabama
Wow.
A&M University, and in Virginia, the first one was Hampton University.
Wow.
Hampton University held the land grant status until 1923, when that status was transferred to Virginia State University. So it means that, one, we have, what it means practically for students, it means that we have teaching programs in agriculture, and that we do research and outreach in agriculture here at Virginia State.
Okay.
There you go.
So, and they pay, so does that funding go towards like scholarships for the students studying in those different areas?
There is money that goes
Okay.
towards scholarships, but most of the money goes towards making sure that we provide research and outreach in the state
Okay.
for agriculture.
Okay. And now next is, what is an endowment, and why are endowments meaningful to institutions?
Oh, endowments are awesome. And so endowments are, let's say, because you're going to be wealthy, incredibly wealthy
Thank you.
one day.
Thank you.
And we are going to come and ask you for a bunch of money.
And,
right?
I'm going to give it to you.
I believe it.
Yes.
I believe it. So
My goal is to have a building named after you and I.
that's great.
Yeah.
And I want to have
We're
that
gonna give
building
money.
name. So let us imagine a world right now where you decide that you want to give Virginia State University $10 million.
Okay.
Okay? So there's really two ways you can do it. You can give it to us and say, you can spend that now. So I add to my budget an extra $10 million and I spend it the way you tell me to. I either build a building with it, or I give it out for scholarships, or I do something like that. But the other thing you can say is, I'm going to give it to you in an endowment. Right? And if you give it to me in an endowment, it means that I never touch the $10 million. I invest the $10 million. And then what I do every year is I pull interest off of the $10 million and I use that to do different things. So let's say, at if I spend about 5% of it a year, let's say it goes up 5% every year, $10 million, 5%, I'm thinking it's 500,000 if I did my math right. So that means every year, instead of having $10 million once, every year I have $500,000 that I can do something with.
Wow, makes sense.
And so some people give money and they give it to be spent then. And some people give money and they put it in endowments to be able to go. So our endowment at Virginia State is, at least the money we have, endowment and pseudo endowment is probably close to $90-100 million, which for an HBCU is one of the largest endowments. Howard's endowment, I think, is creeping up on 700 or 800 million. And there are
such a bill soon.
And there are many institutions that have endowments way bigger than that have endowments
billions.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do schools prefer? Endowment money or spend it right now money?
That's a good question. That's another great question.
Thank you.
I'll tell you this. I'm so excited when people decide to give money to Virginia State to help our students. I like it however you want to give it. So, I mean, and that's the God's honest truth. If you decide to give money, I want you to do the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't ever want to turn you away, and I want to support whatever you want to do.
But what is
both
best?
of them work.
But what is best? Like, what helps? I guess the question is, what helps the longevity of the institution? Or does it depend on the circumstance?
I'm going to say to give me the flexibility to endow it if I want to.
Okay.
That would be best, right? So if I had a choice, it would be, and we've done this with some funds. We've gotten monies and said, okay, we're going to invest them like it's the endowment, but I still have the freedom to touch the principal if I want. That would be best, right? But to be honest, I am not. I love endowments, so you know.
So okay, so y'all have the $200 million budget, right?
Yes.
How do y'all figure out what money goes to what, right? Because a lot of times students will be like, VSU is broke. VSU doesn't have money. VSU didn't have this artist come. So VSU is this, right? That's not the case, right? How do y'all choose where y'all going to put that money? And what do y'all say to the people who feel like y'all don't have money because y'all don't choose to put money in certain areas?
Okay, so we have an entire budgeting process that the entire university plays a part in. Our CFO kind of runs that process. And so every year, every unit says, you know, this is what we need to work next year. And every year when we collect all of that, like you would expect, it's more than what we have.
Yeah.
And so then we have to go through the process of saying, okay, let's reduce it to make sure that it can fit under how much money that we actually are bringing in. When you say, what do we do for people who, everybody at the institution, honestly, and one, they deserve it. They deserve more money in their area. And they would do great things with that money. It's just a challenge that you never have, even schools that have a larger budget than we do, you never really have enough to do everything that you want to do. And so just trying to tell people that we appreciate what they do, that we think they're doing good work, and that the idea that they didn't get some of the money that they wanted wasn't because we didn't think they were going to do good stuff with it, right? It wasn't that we thought they were going to waste it. It was more just that we had to fit everybody under this umbrella of a budget for an institution. And so, trust me when I tell you, no one is happy when we finish the budget process.
So, but I guess, how do y'all know? And I know, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you do have a budget, you have to spend all the money. If I'm correct.
Not necessarily, but there are some funds that have to get spent. All of that money has to get spent, but not all of it. But we can follow. We can keep going with it.
So let's say I'm an SGA.
Okay.
We have a $40,000 budget, right? What happens to the money if we only spend like $32,000?
What we try to do is, before the end of the year, if we know that people aren't going to really make it, is to try to find a way to, some other area might be able to use it to do something with. There are some money every year at the end of the year that doesn't get spent, that sometimes we roll over and sometimes you sweep to do something else with. And so,
but the money doesn't disappear though.
The money it can disappear.
But
when I say swept and moved to another area, I mean. Yeah.
But I mean, like, that's why I always got confused, because I know some people were like, no, we have to spend all this money, or we have to spend all this budget because it doesn't roll over. But where does it go when it doesn't roll over?
Okay, all right. So I like this. We're talking about money. So a budget is really a plan. It's not money.
Okay.
Right. So people think of a budget as if it's money. A budget isn't money. A budget is a plan.
Okay.
And so when we put out a budget, we're saying, okay, we plan to do X, right? We planned for this year to do this. So when we get $40,000 in budget, that's not cash, this is budget, to SGA and say, this is what you have for the year, we've planned for SGA to spend this in this year.
Makes sense.
We didn't plan for it after this year.
Okay.
The next year we have another budget, which will have a different plan negotiated for SGA. And so since it's not cash, it's not like it goes away, it's that a new plan is implemented.
That makes a lot of sense. So just to clarify to the people so to make sure they understand, right? That basically means that it's just like I'm planning to spend about $40,000.
That's correct.
Right? So now if I had $40,000 worth of activities, the money is there when I need it. Now, if we don't do $40,000 worth of activities, now it's just a new plan that comes in place
The next year.
for the next year.
That's right.
And that money can go to another plan. It can stay in the SGA plan. It can whatever.
So let's say the next year after that, let's say you might say, okay, I need 50,000 because I already was going to do 40,000 and I need to do the 10,000 I didn't do last year. Right, so you're gonna come up with but it's a different plan. I'm gonna fund you based on the plan for the year after that.
That makes a lot
Not
of
for the
sense.
plan that you had before.
Okay.
It's a whole new plan now.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow. Okay, you just clarified. Because I'm just thinking like, all right, where does I was so confused. They were like, the money's going to be gone. I'm like, where does the money go?
No, it'd be more accurate to say that the plan is over.
Yeah. Like, we can't use that money for that anymore.
No.
Yeah.
You're going to request a new plan for the next year.
Makes sense. Okay, so we talked about the 4 years,
Yes.
right? And what are things that stay in place. But now I want to know, how does an institution come up with its acceptance rate? Right? Because every institution has different acceptance rates.
Yes.
Some are similar, but how does the institution say, like, okay, we're going to accept this amount of people, or how are we going to be? Because I also think that's what creates like a hype about institutions most of the time is, oh, they have a low acceptance rate. I got in, so now I feel like I'm the chosen one, right? So how does an institution come up with that?
Right. So, which essentially means, by the way, the club that's hardest to get into is the best club. Is it though? Is it though? Are the best parties you've ever been to the house parties? Isn't it? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. All right. So let's break that down. I think for most schools, it's just how many students do you have the capacity to help, to teach? Some schools with their physical space and the number of people they have working, maybe they can do 4,000, 5,000. There's some large schools that can do 50, 60,000. Here at Virginia State, with what we have now, and I'm not talking about our residence hall space, we're actually running out of residence hall space, but with classroom space, once our new building is built, ballpark, I think that 6,000, 7,000 students can be here and learn. Now, we can't house them all, but students can be here and learn in the classroom. And so in a universe where I'm just making up numbers, these numbers are real, but let's say I have 20,000 people that want to come to Virginia State. Well, now I have to find a way to get from 20 to 6 or 7, right? And I think that's where most institutions are. Now, the challenge becomes is what most institutions do is they say, okay, we'll take the most prepared. People call it better. I don't call it better. I don't believe that if you have a higher GPA or higher test score that you're a better student or a better person. It just happens that you have a higher GPA. You might be more prepared for college, but it'll make you better. Right? Okay, so most people will take that, take those students, right, and kind of leave students that are less prepared, have less funds, have lower GPAs, and leave them to go somewhere else. And so I think that's where you get those kind of acceptance rates. So some of the schools that are most prestigious, a lot of people apply, a lot of people want to go, everybody can't go, and so that's how they do it. So that's kind of how that works.
So how do you keep people coming in the doors?
What's good, y'all? Are y'all having a hard time starting conversations in large rooms? Do you need to find more effective ways to draw attention to yourself without wearing a fancy outfit? I figured out a hack. You need some Financial Revolution merch. Everything is a staple piece that represents Black wealth. You are what you wear, so make sure you join the rest of the billionaires and get some FR merch. We have hoodies, sweatsuits, t-shirts, and much more. Make sure you visit www.financialrevolutionn.com and use code podcast for a special 10% off. Again, go to www.financialrevolutionn.com and use code podcast for a special 10% off. Let's get it, y'all.
Like, how does enrollment increase? Because I know the year before last, y'all had the highest enrollment.
That's right.
Then y'all upped it again and had the highest enrollment
That's
again.
correct.
So
That's
what do you think is creating that? How do you keep people coming in the door?
I mean, some of it is kind of getting the word out, right? And letting people know how great VSU is. But the baseline of it is you got to be good at it. I mean, we got some of the best faculty
No,
here.
I agree.
And we've recruited some of the best students here. And again, not all the students that had the great GPAs, but some of the best students who have done some great things like you. And so when people see graduates of Virginia State, when they meet alums of VSU, and they go, wow, that alum is doing things, then people want to come.
Yeah.
And so, you can, we've had some viral activity, right? We've got the presidential debate, 2024.
That's a big
presidential debate at Virginia State.
That's a big thing.
It's huge. Hold on. Let me finish this point, though, right?
Okay.
I mean, those kind of things do attract
Yeah.
attention to the institution, and that's important. But it doesn't work if you're attracting attention to an institution that doesn't have the quality of faculty and the quality of academic programs that we have. That's the baseline.
Yeah.
It has to be there. Okay, now you can talk about the debate.
Okay. I don't know if you talked about this publicly yet or any other platform, but can we get an exclusive of how did that happen?
How did it happen? Okay, exclusive. First time here on the Young and Dumb
Show.
podcast.
Yeah.
The show.
Yeah.
I am I like to try to do big things. I ask my staff questions all the time about what can we do. And this actually came out of 2020. When did you start here?
2019.
2019. So I don't know if you remember when we had the Democratic governors debate. You might not have known because a lot of students don't pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yanaya's into that, so she probably had me there.
Okay, she probably had you.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we had that debate on campus. It was the Democratic primary for the governor in Virginia. We had 4 of the governor's candidates, gubernatorial candidates here at the university. And at that event, I leaned over to our government relations person, Eldon Burton, who was a great man, and I said, you know what? It would be cool to have the presidential debate here. I just said that, right? I forgot I said it. He didn't forget I said it, and he thought it was a great idea too. And he went out and he applied, and we submitted a great application. They came to visit and toured campus and loved it, and ultimately selected us to be a host site for the presidential debate. So we're super excited about it.
So that's a process. So it's not.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So
it's a whole process.
You have to put in an application.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even know that. Wow. I'm learning so much here. Thank you so much, President Abdullah. I'm learning so much. Wow, that is super dope. That was real big breaking news that was super dope. I don't think you understand. I'm scrolling on my Instagram and I see that, I'm like, oh snap. This is cool. And I think that's going to put another fire behind students' eyes because, when you're exposed to certain things or you could brag that my HBCU did this and my HBCU is doing this, right? It gives them the cool points, And it also is like, wow, I can do this in the future, right? So they see a level of themselves and other people because it's so close to home.
Well, that's the trick. I think trying to make sure the students see, and then we all see, that we can do that here, right? We don't have to look somewhere else to do different things, right? And that the greatness, the debate doesn't make us better, right? We're good already. Right? And the students and the faculty make us good, right? It's good to have people recognize us externally, but first we really got to recognize ourselves internally and know how good we are. Even if we didn't get it, we're still the same school if we don't get the debate, right?
So, okay, we wanted down to our last
Okay.
last couple. Okay. But how do you get everyone, or at least majority of your faculty and staff, to believe in a VSU mission? Because one of my mentors once told me is that a good business, a good CEO, anybody who just has a good organization is someone who's able to get people to believe in a mission. Right? Because if they just believe in you, it's like, all right, they just believe in President Abdullah. But if they believe in the mission of Virginia State University, they understand everything wholeheartedly and they're working towards that.
Right.
How do you get that spirit, that school spirit? Because I think VSU has that.
Thank you.
And how were you able to do that?
Wow, that's another good question. You're asking some great questions. Sheesh.
I'm just so curious.
I'll tell you this. I believe, and when I say I believe and I say it like that, I mean I know it might not be true. It just means I believe it, right? I believe that everyone who is here that believes in the work that they do, that they believe in Virginia State already, right? So my job isn't necessarily to convince people to believe in VSU. It's to let them know that I believe in the work that they do because it is VSU, right? If you're doing positive work here, if you're trying to help young people chase their dreams, then you're doing VSU's work. So if you believe in your work, now trying to help people understand that I want you to believe now in other people's work too, right? That you may not agree with them, but if you see that they're doing good work, believe in their work, even if you don't like them. And if you believe in your colleague's work, who's doing great work, well now, once you believe in your work and you believe in someone else's, you believe in VSU. That's it. It doesn't, it's not a magical thing because I'm not asking people to do things that they don't already want to do. The faculty, they want to teach and be great role models and mentors, the ones that care about the work that they do. So then the challenge is if you don't have someone who really appreciates the work that they do, is to tell them, to try to get them to appreciate their own work. And if they're, or heaven forbid, they're not the right people for the institution, try to find another place for them to work so they can believe in the work that they do, right? But just to tell people, I believe if you're working hard and you care about these kids, then I believe in the work you do. And if I believe in you, then you believe in VSU.
So what's the hiring process? Like, do people, to get hired, do they have to see you? Like,
not most people.
Okay.
No, some people do, but not most.
Okay.
They generally have to meet with their supervisor. Sometimes their supervisor. So sometimes that's me. Sometimes it's not.
Okay.
I think they watch a video on HR, so I think they get to see me move around, but I don't think I.
Okay. Yeah. So for the most part, the hiring process is the supervisor, which would be like a dean or like
could
the
be
head
a dean or
of
director.
of that department.
That's right. That's
okay.
Right.
And so do you know all your employees?
Whew, you know, I was no. I know most, and if I'm honest, I knew more before COVID. COVID kind of slowed. We hired a bunch of people during COVID and right after COVID, and I see people on campus now. I'm like, hey, it's nice to meet you. Like I've been here 3 years. Like, oh my, so that makes me feel bad.
Which is understandable because it's many people, many moving parts.
It is, but I like people, so I like to know people. And I think even before COVID, it was a point when I knew most of the students.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them now, but not as many as I used to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I would, just to give you another compliment, I do think like you have a great job at making your present, like making yourself feel present. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's anybody who doesn't know President Abdullah. Like, you're very friendly, you're out here with the students. Like, just to go viral with your president. Just for you to give me the opportunity to come here and sit with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, give me your time. Like, I appreciate that. Like, I think you do like a great job at that. Even in SGA, when we're like, hey, President Abdullah, like, we want to throw ice water on you. Like, and you're like, cool. When do you want me to be there? You know what I'm saying? I think that's super important, and I think that's what makes you so cool as a president,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So cool.
You throwing compliments my way.
It's so cool.
No, but I appreciate y'all.
Yes.
And I think part of it is your development to know that you shouldn't be scared to ask anybody to do anything. So if you can ask me and I can say yes, you'll ask the next person.
Yes.
Right?
So what would you say to that young kid out here who's looking up to someone like you and wants to be a president of a university? What would you tell them the steps are?
That's a good question. I think, well, first, if they're young like you and you just graduated, do well in school.
Okay.
I mean, it's one thing to love the outside of classroom stuff, but I love the inside of classroom stuff too, right?
Okay.
And if you're going to lead the institution, you got to love and appreciate both sides. So one, study, right?
Yeah.
Study. Second, almost what I did. I mean, learn what your faculty do, learn what the staff do, so that when you get a chance to maybe get one of these jobs, that you have mentors that can chase it. And so after that, it's the same advice I tell everybody when they're doing anything. It's just one, I mean, work hard. There's no substitute for working hard. It just isn't. And hard work will get you places that a lot of other things won't. You've got to do the work. You got to be committed to it. You got to be one to work more than other folks.
Yeah.
Second, you got to treat people well. Like, be a good person. If you work hard and you treat people well, success is almost preordained. So that's it. That's all I'm saying.
And I have another compliment.
Okay.
And this one comes from Yanaya, because this is one of the questions she wanted me to ask you.
Hi, Yanaya.
She basically said that you do a good job at making everyone feel heard in a room. So let's say if it's like a problem where people didn't want separate graduations, right?
Right.
I want to cross the stage with my friend. I want to see my friend cross the stage, right? You do a good job at making sure that both parties understand, like, hey, we may not have the necessary space for this. Or even as simple as at graduation, you're saying like, hey guys, we don't want y'all to come on the stage dancing and doing stuff because of this. right? And you say it in such a way where it's like a politician. Like you know what to say. Like,
Right.
Is that a skill you developed, or like, you know, how do you know what to say and what moment to say it, and just make sure that you're making everyone feel heard and that you understand everyone?
I think part of it is having the relationship beforehand. Again, it's easier to say things when people already have an idea that they know you and there's a level of trust. And I'm not working against you. Right? I want the students to win. I think most people feel like, at least, that most of the time I want the students to win. So if I say you're not gonna win this one, people at least know I'm not coming for you. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not being evil about it. So I think that's one, the relationships early on. I think second is just always, I try to be, as you know, accessible enough and to never hide. It's a difficult challenge. I'm gonna show up. I'm not gonna hide. I might not give you the answer you want, but I'm not gonna hide from you.
Yeah.
So people also know that there's not anything I'm holding back. And then just to be honest, you know, that if you trust me to tell you that I want this graduation to be the best that it can be, then listen when I tell you, please don't dance across the stage, right? But it's a different kind of thing. I want what you want. So I don't know. Sometimes I'm successful. You've seen me be in hot meetings too, and I've gotten, you know, I've gotten rocks thrown at me, and sometimes it was deserved, right? But you got to kind of walk both at the same time. You can't be afraid to be criticized, and you can't be afraid to stand in front of people and tell them what they need to know.
So that leads to my next question, though.
Yeah.
What would you say is the hardest part about your job?
The hardest part about my job, by far, is safety and security challenges. Virginia State University, like all universities, in this world, right now we're dealing with the idea of gun control and what are we going to do with weapons. And there are, every year, there are a couple of, you know, and again, 99.9% of students are here to make their lives better, but there's a small percentage of folks who are students, small percentage of the faculty, small percentage of the staff, very small percentage of this outside community that want to do someone harm. And whenever someone is harmed at VSU, it hurts. It hurts personally. It is by far I get a report every morning on police activity. And if it's very serious, I get a call in the middle of the night. The one thing I hate is getting a call in the middle of the night. It is by far the hardest thing to have to call a parent or brother or sister and say that, it tears me up every time. And, I don't recommend it for anyone, but it's a part of the job. But that's the hardest part by far.
So what do you do outside of the issue?
Like for fun?
Yes. Like what takes the stresses off of this? Because this can be very time consuming.
A little bit.
Right. And it also becomes just who you are. You
bit.
are VSU, you know?
Right.
So what do you do to complete it?
One, I got a beautiful family. I got the two best kids in the world.
Yes, I met your daughter.
Yeah, she's super cool. And
they look just alike.
Thank
it's
you.
So crazy.
Thank you. Because I think she's terribly good looking. So if you're really just alike, then, I think my Safie A2 is the best. Safie A2 is a graduate. She graduated from VSU, got a bachelor's and master's. My son went to Morehouse. They're a little older now, like, a little older than you. I think 24, 25. They're great kids. My wife is the best ever. And so, my family, my extended family, we just went on a great vacation recently. That was awesome. I watch a lot of TV. I love television. I don't tell everybody that, but I sit on the couch,
What shows do you watch?
Stuff. Lately I was watching. I watch a lot of YouTube.
Okay.
So I watch a lot of that Cat Williams.
Oh yeah, I watch that.
With Uncle Shannon Sharp, and I watch that. So I did that. So I do a lot of that.
Okay.
I got friends I call and I'll go hang out with them, and we have things that we do. I got some friends from college and friends from grad school. So I try to remember, the part of me that is, I can say Makola. That's my first name is Makola, that no one ever calls me around here. So I try to be in spaces where people will call me by my first name.
Wow, that's important. Wow, I never thought about that. That's super important because you get it's almost like when they say when mothers become moms.
That's right.
It's like
right.
You're always mom and you're no longer like Angela anymore.
Right.
Here
I'm just praying. I'm prayers all the time. So,
yeah. Wow, that's super, super important. I'll never let you outlive the moment when I saw you in the middle of Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, sitting on the stoop.
That's crazy.
That's
crazy. That was one of the, and I don't even know if you could use it for the podcast. I'm gonna tell a long story. I was with my friends from grad school.
Yeah.
And I was having one of those moments when I hang out with my people and just kind of chill out, right? And we decided to go to New York because my boy's from Brooklyn. And we're just walking through Brooklyn and we were looking for some block party or something that he was going to. We were just going to go to this block party. And I get halfway down the street and a friend of mine from Howard, these are my friends from grad school, a friend from undergrad, like hollers at me. And my friends are like, how do you know if someone everywhere we go? And then, and then I see you. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. That was when I really knew that, VSU is out here in these streets.
Seriously. VSU is out here in these streets, literally. All right, so it's our last couple of questions. I'm going to ask the questions that the students may have.
Okay.
Right? Students may have. So we talked about money, but if I'm a student and I can't afford to attend my institution anymore, or I need more money, what's the best way of going about that? Who do I contact? What do I say? And when is the best time to ask for money?
Wow. I don't know if I've got a great answer for that one. I think one, you really want to do well in your classes. There's some money out there that sometimes people leave for, but they leave it for folks who have higher GPAs in certain majors. And so you want to be doing everything that you can. While I think we all prefer grants and, loans can get kind of difficult sometimes, there are times when it might be more appropriate to look at a loan. We don't have the resources here for everyone who needs money. We don't. We are trying to raise that. That's what I want. I want to be a place where it doesn't matter if you have it or not, that you can come to Virginia State University. But we're really not there yet, which means that when we start to pull into our pot for money for students to keep them in school, one, we're going to run out. So then who are those people? Generally, the biggest criteria that we're looking at is what your GPA is and how well you're doing in school. That's the biggest criteria. The other one is, if I'm honest, how much do you owe? The smaller numbers sometimes are easier to work with than the larger numbers. I don't think there's any special secret though how do I get to the front of the line? I don't know if there is a special secret to that. And I do pledge to get to a place where one day it won't matter, but we're not there yet.
Yes, my student loan stresses me out. They stress me out. They stress me out. They stress me out. But yeah, so I get that. I get that. But I think, a lot of times as students is like, one thing I learned becoming a member of SGA and being in meetings and seeing things, it changed my perspective to understand that it's bigger than you. A lot of times as students is like, I don't want to take out loans. I want to go to school for free. I want my teacher to respond right now.
Right.
I want to do this right now. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, it's so much bigger than just you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You have a couple of people who are making decisions on 6,000 of people who are thinking just like you. So I think that was like one of the biggest things that I learned. Like, it's not just that simple. But I just wanted to ask that because, money is always like the trending topic. Like, how do I get the most money out of my institution? So as someone who's been to college and also a president of an institution, do you recommend getting loans?
Okay.
Like, how can I avoid that?
All right. So I recommend this. I believe that an investment in college is one of the best investments that you can make.
Okay.
All right? If you're serious about it.
Okay.
If you do the work that it takes to get it done. And so very few people, we are the best value in higher education in the Commonwealth, 4-year higher education in the Commonwealth of Virginia. What I mean to say is our tuition and fees in the Commonwealth of Virginia for a 4-year institution, you won't find any institution that charges less than we do. Not one. Having said that, at I don't know what the exact number is, but $23,000 all in for room and board and tuition for an in-state student, most people don't have that kind of money in their pocket. They just can't come out and be like, boom, right? Yeah. And so for many, without loans, they would not have the ability to do it. Now, do I believe they should take out loans? Maybe, but only if you're going to be super serious about it. It's not good to take loans to come to college to enjoy it. That is a bad idea. That is a horrible idea. It's not a good idea to come to spend 6, 7, or 8 years hanging out.
Yeah, that's a bad
If
one.
you're going to spend your future self's money, then you need to get in and get out, right? And make the money that you need for your future self to pay it off, because you borrowed it. You borrowed it from you. I mean, you're paying the loans back, right? So you borrowed it from future Aaliyah. So the question is, current Aaliyah has to do a good job of making sure that she does all the right things, so future Aaliyah has the money to be able to pay it off, right? But if you're not, so for serious students, because for some, whether there may not be certain state support for you. For some, might not qualify for the Pell Grant. Some students might not have had the high school GPA that they wanted, and so some of the aid that they wanted might not be there. Is it a good job to take out? Is it a good idea to take out a loan? Maybe, but you got to decide that you are going to invest your future self's money in a positive way to get a positive return on investment.
That was a wonderful answer.
That was good?
that was a wonderful answer. She started clapping over there.
She was clapping?
Yeah, that was a wonderful
Thank you behind the scenes. I appreciate that. Thank you.
But I guess, what would you say to the people who, because I feel like now, like there was a thing that just came out, I forgot who released it, where they said that they're about to remove the requirement to have a bachelor's degree for a lot of jobs, right? So what do you say to now? I feel like we're in a world, in a space where your degree is starting not to even have the same value. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter,
right?
But it doesn't have the same value that it used to have. So now I like to look at things, and this is what I should have been doing before, but it's okay. As the return of investment, right? If I spend, let's say, over 4 years, $90,000,
indeed,
to go to an institution, did I get a return of investment that's $90,000 worth? Right. So what do you say to the people who feel like college isn't worth it?
Okay, so first, one, I believe you can get way more than $90,000 of investment. It also depends on how much you put in. It's not just money. You can't just put in the money. This ain't that kind of party, right?
Okay.
I mean, you got to put yourself into it to get that value out, right? So part of it is the money. Am I getting the value for the $90,000 I put in? But the other part is, we have put you in front of the smartest people in the world in our faculty. We told them to have office hours, so they would meet you after class, in class and out of class. Did you go to every class? Did you go to office hours? Did you get, if you paid $10, if you pay $5 for a bag of chips, you eat every chip. Why pay $5 for a bag of chips and throw away half the chips? But if you don't go to class, you're throwing away half the money. If you're not going to office hours, you're throwing away half the money. If you're not looking at study abroad, if you're not going to advising, right? So you got to do that work too, right? So the investment is not just the money. It is the money, but it's not just the money. So that's the first part. But the other part is this. I'm not saying that everyone needs a 4-year degree. For some, a 2-year degree is fine. For some, a certificate is fine. For some, a high school diploma is okay, right? It really depends on what you want to do. But I will tell you this. I get angry that some people who talk about the idea that the college degree isn't worth it, they went to college and they're sending their kids to college. So who are they telling that to? Who are they encouraging to go to the military? Or maybe don't go to a 4-year school. Or maybe you're fine without one. Maybe college isn't worth it. Are those people sending their kids to college? Because those people are sending their kids to college, and I have a problem with the messenger, and by definition, then the message. Right? If you don't believe what you're saying, then I have a problem with you saying it. And I believe that there are a lot of folks that are giving these messages to young black and brown kids to encourage them not to do what they encourage others to do. And so again, it is an individual choice. I'm not saying that everybody needs to go to college. For many, not going to college is perfectly fine. And community college is a great place to go. I like community college. I go to one, but I love them. Some great ones in Virginia. But I am not ready yet to say that college isn't worth it. And I'm definitely not ready for people who went to college to tell me that college isn't worth it. And for people who are taking it off the things, see, there are many companies taking off, and many jobs don't need a college degree. But many of those same people that are taking college off the things to work at their companies are sending their kids to college. Make that make sense.
But, okay, I feel like it's just a societal, it's like a status quo. Like, it's like you graduate, you go to college. You graduate high school, you go to college. I feel like that's become like the normal thing to do. That's why a lot of people do it.
It feels like that to you because you went to college. But the vast majority of people don't go to college. Most people don't go to college. Many people where you came from didn't go to college.
True.
Right? So
Or dropped out.
Exactly, right? Or it wasn't their choice to go, right? So it isn't that yet. It isn't that yet in our community, certainly. And so it is an opportunity to learn some skills, to get a credential that can allow you to do certain things. If you need the credential, it's good to go get it. If you don't need it, it's not good to go get it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that was a great answer. I keep saying last couple of questions, but for real,
She got a whole list.
No, for real. We did most of these questions.
Like Uncle Shannon Shaw. Over there like, go ahead.
No, last couple of questions. No, because you're saying some really good things, and it just makes my brain have more questions, and I want students and just people at the end of the day watching this to really understand how HBCUs work, understand the role of, a president and just college in general, So that's really why we're here. So now, as we wrap up, for real. Yeah. How can current students help their HBCU? Because a lot of times as a student, I'm thinking that I'm just a student here, or I'm not big enough, or I don't have the money. What can what do you want me to do? What can students do to help?
The number one thing that students can do to help is to study and graduate. Study and graduate. Study, be really good at what you do, graduate, and then go out here in these streets like you and make a positive impact on the world and let people know you went to VSU, right? And so your impact to help, that's the number one. Now there are other things you can do. You can help us raise money, be a part of call banks, right? You can represent us in places and let people know how great you are. But the number one thing you can do is not even close, is to really study, graduate, be a great representation of the institution, and tell people, like, if you like me and you like what I do, part of who I am is because of Virginia State. And then that allows us to become even better.
That makes sense. And is there some type of financial gain for a student staying longer than the 4 years?
You mean, do we do better?
Yeah, because that's now more money in the school's pocket.
Yes.
So
yes, but I don't want that. I don't want that. I mean, if you ask me a direct question, well, sure. I mean, if students are here longer, then we get more money from students. But that's not what we're trying to do. We want you out as soon as possible. Because the other challenge with that, there's real challenge, not a self-enlightened challenge, is the longer you're here, the less likely you are to graduate. Right? The less likely you are to graduate, then you're not the representation that we want you to be. And so if you're here 4 years, and you put in great work, 4, 5, 6 years, you're more likely to graduate in that window, right? We want you to graduate. We want you to do great things. We want you to chase the dreams that you came here to chase. If you're here longer than that, it's because, one, either we didn't do our job in terms of helping you chase that, or you're kind of unmotivated or trying to figure things out. I don't want that. Does it bring more money? Yeah, but that's not what we're in business to do. We're not in business to make profit, to make money. We're in business to make a better citizenry, to graduate you better so you can do the things that you need to do for your community. So, so yes to the question. I'm gonna be honest with you, right? Yeah, I get more money if you stay. If you were still here now, I'd get some more money. I don't want you here. I want you to graduate.
And then the longer you stay here, now the other challenge is that's more space you're taking up.
Yeah, but that's not even the thing though. I just want you to graduate. I can deal with that part. Yeah. I want you to graduate though. Yeah. There's no incentive for me to keep you.
So what do you say to the kids who stay here for too long? Because there's honestly some people I feel like they slack on purpose because they're not ready to let go. They're not ready to leave. They've had like this 4 years, they've become accustomed to it and they're scared. So what do you say to those kids?
Look, first of all, college is the best 4 years of your life. There ain't nobody who's ever been to college. That was my Cat Williams person. There ain't nobody who's ever been to college. Sorry. Who doesn't think that college is the best 4 years. Yeah. And so it can be intoxicating to stick around. When I was in college, I had a friend of mine who was, he was trying to make it. I don't think he registered for class. He just kind of hung out all the time, right? I think that what you want to do, which is the same as what you do to young people when they come, is you want to help them find out what they really want to do, right? I mean, college is fun, but it is a means to an end. It's not an end. And so if you can get young people to begin to think about what they want, what they really want, and where they want to make an impact, then you can kind of talk through, okay, now how do we get you there through graduation?
That makes sense. And do you feel like...
For real?
No.
Next question, for real.
Yes, it is.
I'm joking.
Do you feel like there's any main differences between when you went to your HBCU to now? Like, what's the I would say the generational difference between like your generation and my generation.
I'm gonna tell you what's not a generational difference is don't let nobody old fool you. We were just as unmotivated, crazy, doing different things, partying, participating in. We were the same as y'all.
Yeah, y'all used to get down. Y'all just didn't have cameras.
We just didn't have cameras. But if we had them, we'd have took a whole bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
Now. I mean, we wanted to take pictures. We just didn't have. We everybody didn't have a camera. I think the real difference though is the internet and social media gives you access to so much more information that you all are probably smarter than we are, right? But you also have so much stuff going on to try to break that down to what you need to use. We have to teach you all more of that than we had to be taught. We didn't have as many tools, so we knew how to use them. You all have way more tools and way more information, so now it's like, which tool do you need to use? So I think that's one part. I think the other one is that you're able to have connections in ways that we weren't able to have. When we left home to come to college, we didn't talk to our high school friends for 6 months. You know? I mean, you only had one. We had one, when I was in school, we had a phone on the floor. So you wasn't making like, you was talking to your mama at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, right?
Wow.
I talked to my mom once a week.
Wow.
Right? So no friends from high school, talked to them once a week. And if I didn't see you, I didn't talk to you. I didn't call you in the other dorm. We met for lunch, we met for dinner, we went to the game together. And so that's one of the things we're trying to adjust is that we used to go to the games to see our friends. Y'all don't have to go to the games to see your friends. You don't have to go to the games to know what's happening at the game.
Yeah, you can just
Right?
watch.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So us trying to adapt to kind of the new way that you all are able to use your phone and technology is probably different. But that's not bad, it's just different.
Yeah. And how can you be the most successful student? Like, what should you really take and run with in your college career to really go out in this real world and be successful?
You know, I think you should believe that it's for, sometimes people take a class and they feel like they're taking a class because somebody's making them take a class. That's your class.
Paid to be there.
You paid to be there. Get everything you can, right? Raise your hand, ask the questions, participate in study groups, go to office hours and learn more information. Like treat the whole experience like the party. That part, we made the party for you. You don't have to go. But if you go, have a great time. Like party as hard as you can, right? But it's soak up as much as you can. Have as many friends. Make the real meaningful relationships. It's the friendships that you have now that are going to pay off for you in the future professionally more than you'll ever know.
That's a fact.
Right? It's right now all of y'all are at the same level. But like I went to school with so many people. I mean, some of the people I went to school with are mayors, CEOs of companies now. And back in the day, they're artists, major artists. And back in the day, they were just my friends. And now they're people who I can call and they can call me. And so it's the relationships that you've developed that are even more important than the relationship you have with me. Because by the time you get to a certain place in your career, shoot, I'm already old. I might not be around, but your other friends will be.
Yeah.
So
Your Naya will be the president.
your Naya will be the president, and she'll hire you.
Yeah,
that's
you
right.
know.
How you Naya?
Yeah, yeah, I get it. All right, so that was my last question for real. This is just a last segment, right? Where it's your talk your ish segment, right?
Okay.
And in this segment, you can talk your ish, right? So what is something that you're really, really passionate about?
I'm passionate about HBCUs. I'm passionate about young people.
Yes.
I believe in young people. I believe that the future is bright and that y'all are going to kill it. And I just want to be a part of helping you get to where you need to go. Yes. So anything I can do to help, I'm all in. You know, so. Okay,
thank you. And what would you say to the people that ever doubted you or looked back down on you or said that you wouldn't get to where you are?
I'm going to tell you this. It doesn't matter what people think of you. It matters what you think of yourself. When I look back at the times when I doubted myself, I wish that I didn't. And the one thing that I try to tell people is that you have to believe in you. Like you gotta, there ain't nobody else who's gonna, you gotta believe in you. And every room you walk into, you deserve to be in. And there's nobody who's smarter or harder working than you are, and that you can get this done. And if you don't believe it, nothing will happen.
Yes.
And so anybody who's ever thought that about me, I mean, that's fine. That was their right. They get to have ideas about me, but they don't get to tell me who I am. I know who I am.
Yeah, that's very, very important. And what is your favorite financial lyric or rap lyric that talks about money, business, or just gets you in that mode?
Ooh. My favorite lyric is by Big Daddy Kane.
Okay, Big Daddy King.
And he said,
Okay.
a champ like Tyson,
Okay.
a captain like Kirk, no. Employee of the month, because, I do work.
So you live by that.
I do. You got to work hard. I think working hard is important. So I'm always trying to be employee of the month.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, President Abdullah. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the gems that you dropped. Like, I feel like this is going to be a really, really great episode. And thank you for coming on the show. Any last things you want to say to the guests, to the people?
No. Just excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for tuning in and watching another episode of the Young and Dumb Show. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, and tell us what you learned. What's some game you got? Let's get it, y'all. See y'all next week.